home off 22nd Avenue Southwest and Trotter Road in unincorporated Largo at around 1:45 Saturday afternoon. 10 Tampa Bay's Angelina Salcido is live at the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office.
And Angie, you spoke to family not long ago.
Yeah, it has been a very tough Christmas Eve and Christmas for this family, now grieving the loss of this 23-year-old mother of two who deputies say was shot and killed by her own 14-year-old brother. I want you to take a look at who we're talking about here. This is Abrielle Baldwin and her two sons. You can see them in the photo there. 6-year-old Jamari and Amir, who is just 11 months old. Her sister gave me this photo after we spoke moments ago. She says their family is heartbroken about her loss in this entire situation.
Christmas Eve in Florida. A family gathers at grandmother's house for what should be the happiest night of the year. But inside those walls, an argument is brewing between two teenage brothers, one that won't stay contained to raised voices. Within minutes, the holiday celebration transforms into a crime scene. A young mother steps outside, trying to calm the situation with 5 simple words. 8 seconds later, she's lying in the driveway, fatally shot. Then another gunshot rings out. Another brother down. 2 firearms. 2 shooters. Both juveniles. One victim dead at 23, leaving behind 2 babies who will never remember this Christmas the way it was supposed to be. This is the story of how a family argument on the most sacred night of the year ended with one sister dead, 2 brothers facing murder charges, and a grandmother left standing in the wreckage of what used to be her family. Christmas Eve 2023. Largo, Florida. The kind of night when families gather around tables overflowing with food and laughter. It's supposed to be sacred. It's supposed to be safe. For one family in unincorporated Pinellas County, Christmas Eve started like any other holiday gathering. Grandmother's house was the meeting point. Kids running around. Adults catching up. Everyone was there to celebrate. But somewhere between the dinner table and the driveway, this night took a turn that no one saw coming. By the time the sun rose on Christmas morning, 23-year-old Abrielle Baldwin was dead. Shot in the chest in her grandmother's driveway. Her 2 young brothers, 14 and 15 years old, were in custody. One charged with first-degree murder. The other with attempted first-degree murder. 2 babies left without their mother. A grandmother left standing in a scene of unimaginable horror. This is the story of how an argument over Christmas gifts turned into a double shooting. How access to firearms transformed sibling rivalry into homicide. And how a single moment of rage destroyed an entire family. Abrielle Baldwin arrived at her grandmother's house that night with her 2 sons, Jamari, 6 years old, and Amir, just 11 months old. Known to her family as Bree. She was a devoted mother. Her younger sister Ariana would later describe her as someone who lived for those boys. She was a really sweet person, Ariana said at a candlelight vigil days later. She was just special. She didn't know people cared about her, she thought nobody cared about her. Also at the grandmother's house were Abrielle's 2 younger brothers. A 14-year-old and a 15-year-old. Something had been building between these brothers for days. An argument over Christmas presents. Over fairness. Over the perception that their mother wasn't treating them equally. Pinellas County Sheriff Bob Galtieri would later explain it bluntly during a press conference. You've got the 14-year-old who's mad at the 15-year-old because mom isn't buying equal gifts. A petty grievance. The kind of thing that should have been resolved with a conversation. But it didn't get resolved. Instead, it festered. And by Christmas Eve, that resentment had turned into something dangerous. Inside the grandmother's house, the argument between the brothers kept resurfacing. Voices started to rise. At first, it was just noise. The kind of bickering that happens in families. But then the argument escalated. Words turned sharper. Tones turned meaner. And then, according to Sheriff Galtieri's account, the 14-year-old did something that changed everything. He pulled out a gun. A .40 caliber semi-automatic handgun. And he pointed it at his 15-year-old brother's head. He takes out the gun and tells him he's going to shoot him in the head, Sheriff Galtieri said. A 14-year-old child. At his grandmother's house. On Christmas Eve. threatening to execute his own brother over Christmas presents. An uncle stepped in. He grabbed the 14-year-old and pulled him outside, trying to defuse the situation. Trying to get him away from his brother before something terrible happened. But the 14-year-old was still holding the gun. Still angry. Still refusing to let it go. And that's when Abrielle Baldwin made a decision that would cost her everything. Abrielle stepped outside. She saw her youngest brother standing in the driveway with a gun in his hand. She saw the rage in his face. And she did what any older sister would do. She tried to talk him down. According to Sheriff Galtieri, Abrielle said 5 words. Just 5 words. All she said was, "Knock it off. Why are you doing this? It's Christmas." That's all she said. Not an insult. Not a threat. Just a simple, desperate plea for her brother to stop. To put the gun down. To remember that this was their grandmother's house. That this was Christmas Eve. That this was family. But the 14-year-old didn't stop. "He goes and puts a bullet in her," Sheriff Galtieri said. 1 shot. A .40 caliber round fired at close range. It struck Abrielle Baldwin in the chest. She collapsed in the driveway. Her mother Joyce, who was inside the house when the shooting happened, heard the gunshot and came running. She found her daughter lying on the ground, bleeding out on Christmas Eve. "Left her to die in the driveway," Sheriff Galtieri said. Abrielle Baldwin, 23 years old, mother of 2, loving sister, shot and killed by her own brother. Not because she threatened him. Not because she attacked him. But because she asked him to stop. The first gunshot shattered the night. Family members screamed. People came running. But the violence wasn't over. According to surveillance footage recovered from the scene, 8 seconds after Abrielle was shot, another gunshot rang out. The 15-year-old brother came outside. He saw his sister lying in the driveway. He saw his 14-year-old brother standing there with the gun that had just killed her. And he made a decision that would change his life forever. He pulled out his own gun. A .45 caliber semi-automatic handgun. And he shot his younger brother. Shot him 1 time in the stomach. Sheriff Galtieri confirmed.
She's just a woman going about life, doing her thing with her 2 kids, trying to make a living, trying to make it, and her brother killed her. And why did her brother kill her? Because what she said was, "Knock it off. Leave it alone. Why are you doing this? It's Christmas. Why are you getting all upset?" So he goes over and puts a bullet in her, tears up her insides, and kills her. Leaves her dead in the driveway.
Now there were 2 gunshot victims. Abrielle Baldwin, fatally wounded, dying in the driveway. And her 14-year-old brother, shot in the abdomen, collapsing next to her. The 15-year-old didn't stay at the scene. He ran, discarding the .45 caliber handgun in a nearby yard as he went. He made his way to a relative's house in Clearwater, several miles away. He fled to a relative's house in Clearwater, and that's where we arrested him, Sheriff Galtieri said. 1 young woman dead. 1 teenage boy critically injured. 2 firearms lying in evidence. And a family torn apart in less than 60 seconds. Emergency responders raced to the scene. Paramedics worked frantically to save Abrielle Baldwin's life. But the damage was too severe. Despite their efforts, Abrielle was pronounced dead at the scene. Her 14-year-old brother was rushed to a nearby hospital for emergency surgery. He would survive. Police secured the house. They separated witnesses. They recovered the 2 firearms, both semi-automatic handguns, both loaded, both accessible to teenagers who should never have had their hands on them. Detectives began reconstructing what had happened. They interviewed family members. They reviewed surveillance footage. And piece by piece, they understood the horrifying sequence of events. 1 argument. 2 guns. 8 seconds between shots. 1 sister dead. 2 brothers facing murder charges. The legal implications were immediate and severe. Both brothers were juveniles. Both would face charges that could alter the course of their entire lives. The 14-year-old, still recovering from surgery in the hospital, was charged with first-degree murder in the death of his sister Abrielle Baldwin. Prosecutors made clear they were considering whether to charge him as an adult, which would remove the protections typically afforded to juvenile offenders. The 15-year-old, arrested at a relative's house in Clearwater, was charged with attempted first-degree murder and tampering with evidence. He was placed in a mental health facility after making threats to harm himself. Under Florida law, juveniles charged with serious crimes like murder can be transferred to adult court. Both brothers had no prior criminal history. They were children. But the crime they were accused of was anything but childish. One sister was dead. The public reaction was immediate and intense. How do you charge a 14-year-old with murder? How do you send a child to prison for life? But at the same time, how do you ignore the fact that a 23-year-old mother of two was shot and killed by her own brother on Christmas Eve? Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the entire case is this: where did the guns come from? Two teenage boys. Two semi-automatic handguns. A .40 caliber and a .45 caliber. Both loaded. Both accessible enough that two juveniles could bring them to a family Christmas gathering and use them in a moment of rage. Under Florida law, adults can be held criminally liable if a minor gains access to a firearm that was not properly secured. Florida Statute 790.174 makes it a criminal offense to store or leave a firearm in a location where a minor can access it if the minor uses the gun to cause injury or death. In this case, a young woman is dead. A teenage boy is hospitalized. The criminal liability doesn't stop with the shooters. It extends to whoever allowed those guns to be accessible in the first place. If those guns had been locked away. If they had been stored with trigger locks. If they had been kept in a safe that required a code or a key, Abrielle Baldwin might still be alive. But they weren't secured. They were accessible. And a young mother paid for that failure with her life. Among all the devastation, two small faces stand out. Jamari, 6 years old. Amir, 11 months old. Abrielle Baldwin's sons. When the sun rose on Christmas morning, their mother was gone. Not on a trip. Not at work. Gone forever. At the candlelight vigil held days after the shooting, family members surrounded photos of Abrielle with her two babies. Candles flickered in the darkness. And Abrielle's younger sister Ariana made a promise. "They're going to be taken care of regardless," she said. She was 21 years old. She had just lost her sister. And now she was part of the network of family members who would step in to raise these two boys. But no amount of love from aunts and uncles and grandparents can replace a mother. These two boys will grow up with a hole in their lives that nothing can fill. They will grow up knowing their mother was killed by their uncle. They will carry that weight for the rest of their lives. On Tuesday night, just days after the shooting, family and friends gathered for a candlelight vigil. Abrielle's mother Joyce was there. She had been inside the house when the shooting happened. She had heard the gunshot that killed her daughter. And now, days later, she was still trying to process it all. Ariana, Abrielle's younger sister, spoke on behalf of the family. "It's hard," Ariana said, her voice breaking. "I feel like everything is destroyed and taken from me." She wasn't just grieving her sister. She was grieving all three of her siblings. Abrielle was dead. The 14-year-old brother was in custody facing murder charges. The 15-year-old brother was in a mental health facility facing attempted murder charges. One sister lost to death. Two brothers lost to the criminal justice system. A family obliterated in a single night. "She was a really sweet person," Ariana said of Abrielle. "She was just special. She didn't know people cared about her. She thought nobody cared about her." That's the tragedy within the tragedy. Abrielle Baldwin lived her life believing she wasn't loved. Believing she didn't matter. And now, in death, she was being mourned by a community that wanted her to know she was wrong. She was loved. She mattered. And her absence left a void that would never be filled. This is not a story about a stranger breaking into a home and committing violence. This is a story about a family that destroyed itself from within. One moment of rage. One accessible gun. One sister trying to be a peacemaker. And everything fell apart. Joyce Baldwin lost her daughter. She lost both of her sons, one to death, two to the criminal justice system. She's left trying to help raise two grandsons who will grow up without their mother. Abrielle Baldwin lost her sister and both of her brothers in a single night. At 21 years old, she's now part of a family that will never be whole again. And the two brothers, 14 and 15 years old, will spend the rest of their lives living with what they did. One killed his sister. The other shot his brother. Those are facts that no amount of time or rehabilitation can erase. On Christmas morning 2023, while families across the country unwrapped presents and shared meals, the Baldwin family was planning a funeral. Abrielle Baldwin's two sons woke up without their mother. Her siblings woke up without their sister. Her mother woke up without her daughter. And two teenage boys woke up in custody, facing murder charges that would define the rest of their lives. All of it stemmed from a single moment. A moment when a 14-year-old boy pulled out a gun and refused to put it down. A moment when Abrielle Baldwin stepped outside and tried to calm him with 5 words. A moment when a trigger was pulled and a young mother's life ended in an instant. That's how fast it happens. That's how quickly celebration turns to tragedy. That's how easily access to firearms transforms a family argument into a homicide. The question that haunts this case is this: how many more families will learn this lesson the hardest way possible? How many more Christmases will be destroyed by violence that didn't have to happen? The Baldwin family can't answer those questions. They're too busy trying to survive. Trying to raise 2 boys without their mother. Trying to understand how the most sacred night of the year became the worst night of their lives. Rest in peace, Abrielle Baldwin. Your 2 sons will know you loved them. Your family will make sure of that. And your story will be told, not as a statistic, not as a headline, but as a reminder of what happens when we fail to protect the people we love from the dangers living right inside our own homes.